Hello, everybody. My name is Todd Nielsen, and I'm the owner and primary consultant for Clocktower Advisors. We provide consultation around building online communities and great digital experiences that build trust and deepen relationships between people online. I am incredibly excited today to be welcoming a new friend, someone who I met, I think it was through Teo.com, or I'm trying to remember where we bumped into each other.
I think it was in vanilla
Oh, yeah,
form,
it was
online
right.
webinars.
Right, it was one of the online webinars I was involved with Vanilla Forum. But Alexandra Radu, who comes to us from Bournemouth in the UK, and really excited to have her on the show today because she has background in conversational design and artificial intelligence chatbots, just a wealth of knowledge about this background. And because this is such a neat emerging area for online communities, a lot of discussion forums, a lot of community platforms make use of chatbots. It seemed like it would just be a really great opportunity to have her on the show and share a little bit about what she does. Alex, welcome. Really glad to meet you. So tell me a little bit about where you live and work right now. What is your day to day?
So at the moment, I'm in the UK. I work for JP Morgan. And I now actually have transitioned to more of community management, but I have about 3 years experience in building conversational agents, and mostly in kind of like the support service area. But I have had various tests of other chatbots. So I've played around with Google's Assistant, kind of like skill building, and with Alexa, because I wanted to improve my knowledge of what I'm building. So I wanted to see how other people do it. And so actually in the background, so the skeleton of all of the assistants is kind of similar because you use the same type of logic to build them, but the actual implementation and the tools and kind of like the algorithms that you use will differ. So I know that a lot of what Google does uses Dialogflow for actually the dialogue conversation interactions. Mostly if you're building your own, or if you have kind of like a custom platform, you will build your own algorithms and you'll build your own kind of like utterances and libraries of things that your chatbot says. But I think beyond just the implementation and the actual, you can make a chatbot on Facebook Messenger, and if it's done really well, then, everyone's going to love it and they're going to use it. There was this weather chatbot called Poncho that I used to love. It was absolutely amazing. And he had a really good persona. And that's kind of like one of the things that you need to think about when you start building your chatbot, and when you think about, what is it that you want it to be used for, and how do you want it to sound to people? And you need to make sure that you're consistent with it. So like, you can't have it be like really bubbly and happy one day, and then the next day it's like super creepy and but yeah, conversational design is basically a design language based on human conversation. It tries to, I would say, replicate all of the components of what we're doing. So if I'm having conversation with you, you would like to replicate that, but being kind of like guided by a chatbot, which sounds kind of like, okay, fair enough. You can talk to people. It's easy. But when you're asking a machine to take the attributes of humans and convey that in like a meaningful and helpful way, it can get very tricky. And I think one of the kind of like difficult things is identifying first your persona. So what is your chatbot? What do they do? What's their job? How do they sound like? A lot of people now have moved away from giving it kind of like male, female type of characteristics. But generally, from my experience so far, most of the first chatbots were named after or had the voice of a lady. And that was because A lot of kind of like research points out that ladies are more like present more empathy and are seen to be more kind of like accommodating and helpful. So a lot of people went down that route, but now we're seeing that actually they're trying to kind of like either give them kind of like neutral personality with neutral names, neutral avatars, maybe actually an animated avatar, not like a picture or 3D design. So for example, with Poncho, I don't really know if he was a boy or a girl because it was this little cat in a poncho. So you couldn't really know like what it was. And I think the fact that it was a cute cat, like in an animated kind of like avatar, and everything that he said or like some gifts that he sent you or like emojis, they were kind of like, funny, cute, helpful, and kind of that's their persona. And that was what it was meant to be. But then you might have something like a chatbot that helps you get insurance. I don't know if you really want a cat in a poncho that helps you do that.
I don't want to buy my insurance from a cat in a poncho, no.
So that's where kind of like this persona aspects becomes really important because you want the chatbot to represent, the person that you'd be expecting to speak to.
Well, that's a really great point because as I think about online communities, we often talk about, what's the character of that community? How do people communicate here? What kinds of things do they say to each other? Is there, there are ways to build tone of voice into your responses, and you could be irreverent, you could be upbeat, or you could be a little bit acidic and sarcastic about things. And so
we say cheeky in the UK.
Cheeky, a little cheeky, right? Yes, I love it. So I could definitely see how if you're going to build a chatbot experience into your online community, if you want that to be a helper or someone that assists the community manager with a lot of the kind of rote Q&A sorts of things that they might get. Like I know, for example, Discourse has a chatbot that's built into it called DiscoBot, I think, or at least it did. I assume they still did. I've got a good friend, Sarah Hawk, who is with them, and I know she does a lot with user experience. But is that question about like, they built that chatbot experience, sort of generically, but there should be some ways to alter how that chatbot interacts based on the kind of community that I'm creating. I should be able to customize that experience.
Yes, and I think that comes down to understanding the persona of the actual users of that chatbot. So, for example, you could have different chatbots for different aspects of your community. So you could say that if someone's new and they are looking for stuff about the community and they want to join, you would have a different kind of chatbot for that, because that chatbot is someone who's there to kind of like provide more information, to give them kind of like insights on what the community is about. And if you had maybe a chatbot that then goes and sits inside of the community and maybe facilitates something like, I don't know, finding leaders of the community or finding SMEs, so like really, really experienced people in some domains, then you had that built differently, because this is not someone who just wants to know like, hey, what's this community about? This is someone who actually is looking for a very specific piece of information. And I think in online communities, the beauty of it is that you can actually figure out what people talk about and the questions that people ask a lot. And that kind of makes the bot even more useful. And I'm going to give you an example actually of an online community that's a bit it's a bit strange, but bear with me. So there's this game, we'll not name it, but it's kind of like a strategy game. And a lot of the users of that game use a specific chat platform. So someone decided to build a chatbot for that chat platform because they know the players are on that platform. So they have specific questions that they can ask the chatbot, and it it gives them what skills they need to do next if they want a specific kind of like character angle. So like maybe they want a warrior or they want like a wizard or whatever. But like you just ask the chatbot and the chatbot sends you back like a map of all of the skills and like the level that you need to upgrade to. So that's a really good example of someone who's
yeah.
And I mean like players there use it like crazy because it's like instead of having to go to your guild or having to go to a friend and be like, hey, how do I get to make my character this? They might not know. Or they might not be online, or no one maybe has thought about doing the character that way before. But if you go to the chatbot, you can just ask it, like, you know, like, I want this skills for this character for this level. And they give you a map.
That's amazing.
So that's a really good example.
Yeah, I love that, especially in thinking about that context for even things like communities of practice, where if you want people to be maybe newcomers, if you want them to be welcomed into a profession, you're trying to, you know, introduce them to the culture of that profession, maybe even give them some advice around career pathways or, you know, ways to do things or ways to get things done. Build some of those things into the chatbot experience so that they can get at that really, you know, insider information that they wouldn't otherwise get. That's cool.
I mean, like, ultimately, you need to do a bit of research on, you know, what is the reason why you want to build this. So what is your chatbot's job description? What do you want it to do, and what do your user need it to do? So this is kind of like the, you know, the person you call at 2 o'clock in the morning because you don't know how to do X. And you need to think like, you know, like, what is that 2 o'clock in the morning call about? Like ask, or what have they asked previously? What are some of the things that my community is really concerned about? What are the main kind of like, you know, topics maybe that come up that people want to discuss? What are the kind of like seminars, webinars that they attend? Maybe you can suggest them, like, you know, like, hey, we've run some webinars previously. Here's a list of our like top rated content if you want to catch up. Because with communities of practice, and I've noticed this a lot, there's a lot of rotation in the membership of the community, and a lot of kind of like, you know, artifacts and knowledge gets lost in all of that kind of like transition. And a chatbot's a really cool way of making sure that, you know, if you're looking for that webinar that happened a month ago on X topic, you kind of have a way to easily find it without having to ask 20 people. And at the same time, like, you can have it do, I don't know, funky stuff. Like if your community, online community asks for, you know, put your date and month of birth in, you could have it set up so that, you know, when it's your birthday, you get like a message in your chat or like in your email saying like, you know, happy birthday from your bot, because it's from everyone in the community, but, you know, like, you're never going to forget because, you know, it's a robot, it remembers.
That's true.
And, go ahead.
I can just think of like so many things I want to do with this. So there was a community that I worked with that was all about quitting smoking, and so people were celebrated when they reached a year and a day in their quit. And so something that kind of celebrates that community wide, you know, that the chatbot, you know, posts a message or does something on that front would be amazing. Just so many cool things we could do with this. I was also thinking about health support communities too, where you were talking about sort of at 2 a.m. if you need to chat, having somebody there, or even if it's just a chatbot, where you could say if you're having a health issue or a mental health issue, and you can put that into the chatbot, that it would recognize a danger situation or be able to understand when to escalate that to a real healthcare professional, so that they can provide help in a timely way.
So, you know, like in that sense, when you're calling a real, you know, like hotline for that kind of thing, they ask you, you know, like, have you been consuming any substances in the last 24 hours, 7 days? Have you had any suicidal thoughts? Have you done any of these things? And sometimes for some people, it's not that easy to admit those things in a conversation with someone. But actually, you might discover that if it's through a text in a service online where you don't actually talk to someone, they might be more, or even like maybe you can't talk to someone. Like, you know, if you're in the situation where you're being in an abusive household and you can't talk to someone,
but
it might be easier to
type.
just type, and say like, you know, like I'm having this problem and this is happening, and like, you know, I'm in a really high risk situation. And you don't have to say anything because someone might hear you, and you actually feel like a bit more safe because you know that like this is going to go somewhere and like something's going to happen maybe, or they're going to give you some advice instantly, not like, you know, when it's too late. So there's a lot of things that you can do, and more people are starting to use text. And I think because we're all moving to that, in some way, I don't think that like text-based chatbots will disappear. I know that there's a lot of stuff happening in like the voice area, but there's also a lot of concerns relating voice with like all the stuff about Amazon listening on our conversations and like all these things. So I think like to some extent people are still pretty much attached to texting. I don't think it's going to go away too soon. And I think like it also provides some, you know, some alternatives maybe for situations in which you couldn't really use voice, or for people that maybe can't use voice, and it still offers the same kind of like, you know, experience. And actually more and more we're seeing that with chatbots, people don't build them for a single platform. They built them so they can actually deploy them to multiple platforms. So you might have an Alexa skill, you might have a Google skill, you might have an actual chatbot on your web page. You might have a Facebook bot on your Facebook page for like all your fans. So like people don't just do like one. They kind of try to have it covered. So if you're looking for it in a different area or in a different engagement experience, you can find it there. And also like another thing that I think like is really funny is of like, this can be controversial. I think you shouldn't teach commands or give instructions to people when you're building these chatbots. So what I mean is you shouldn't tell them like, if you want more options, click here or click one of the buttons. You should do it in a conversational way. So you should ask them like, do you want to see more options? Or like, what would you need help with next? We have this, this, and this. So you should not teach people to do things. You should engage in a conversation for them to do things. Because then there's no difference between you going through a website and clicking pages or following instructions and having a conversation. So the conversation aspect is, you know, the main point. It's a, you know, you're having a chat with someone. You're not telling someone how to do things.
Well, it's the glue, because I think about the different learning styles that people have or different ways of engaging with material. And if I've decided that I want to do chat instead of doing a voice call for support for something or reading through a website's FAQs and documentation, I'm going to chat because I want conversation around that. So I think that's the point that you're making, that we want to have that kind of interaction. We want it to be a human-like experience of having a conversation with somebody in text, right?
Yeah. I mean, like, don't get me wrong. I don't think anyone expects a chatbot to sound like their best friend or like know things like their best friend. But sometimes actually, if you have this kind of like capacity, actually amazing people and wowing people with the fact that you remember certain things from previous conversations. So let's say you have a community platform where people log in and you actually know things about that person and you know things about their previous conversations. People are really, really like wowed by those things, and they will keep coming back, because if you come in today and you ask, for example, for some information from the chatbot, they give you the information. And the next time you ask a question that's super similar on the same kind of subject, and they're like, oh, hey, I know we chatted about this last week, and it seems like you're still having issues. Like,
Oh,
would you
wow.
like me to send an email to one of our team so they can get in touch? And that's like, I mean, you said, oh, wow. Like,
Yeah.
you know, like that's super cool. Because even if you call like a support center, they might not remember, or they might not have put down notes, you know, that this happened 2 weeks ago.
Right.
The chatbot knows because you've had this problem before, and they have it in their log that you had a conversation. So they can come back and say, hey, I saw that you had this problem, like, you know, last week or 2 weeks ago. Do you want to talk to someone from our team? Because it seems like it's not getting like sorted. And instead of losing a member or a customer or a user, you actually kind of like win them over because they're like, oh my God, this is freaking amazing. Like, they're actually not a problem. Like, they actually are not like waiting for me to say these things again. Like, they're actually trying to sort this out, like, without me saying that I need to talk to someone, like, you know, a real human. So, I mean, it's all about making people feel, you know, like a VIP. It's about using this kind of technology to your best advantage to increase the kind of like experience and the retention that you have with them. Or like if you have a chatbot, for example, that helps you do shopping, and, you know, like I think H&M did one where you could actually go through stuff and you could select kind of like all of your color preferences and your sizes and kind of like what kind of styles you like and stuff like that. And they recommended you things. And then if you click on stuff, it opens to take you to the shop to buy those things. I mean, if you then went even further and you come back to the chatbot and you ask it for a similar type of thing, so like you were looking to buy some boots, and now you're asking for the boots again. Well, how about you give them the boots that they clicked on the last time? And you're like, hey, I know you looked like at this exact same kind of like clothing item last time. And I know that you didn't buy it. So do you want to buy it now? Instead of you having to scroll through like everything else again. And I think like that's what sometimes people forget. It's like, yes, it is a conversation, but you have so much information about that person and their previous conversations. And if you actually show them that you care and that you use that information and you don't ask them for it again, they're going to be like sold for life. They're going to be like, this is so, you know?
I got to be honest. I've never seen any chatbot that smart that comes up with something like that. And you know, I live a sheltered existence, so it's quite possible I've missed these. But like my typical experience is if I'm dealing with like a cable company here in the U.S. and they've got a chatbot customer support option, I'm usually just trying to bypass it as soon as possible because it's awful, you know. And I think, you know, you and I talked a little bit before we got on the call today about some of my past experience with game design was building scripted, you know, kinds of interactions for chatbots in a game. And it's so personally frustrating to me, like knowing that like I was building stuff like that back in the early 2000s, but like these modern corporations can't wrap their head around, you know, building a conversational dialogue with something even as, you know, like you were talking about the difference between doing scripted versus natural language processing and kind of building, you know, conversational, I don't know what you call them, arrays or whatever around the whole thing. But it's incredibly frustrating that these companies just are still living in like the early 2000s with this stuff. Not even that. Like I was doing more advanced stuff than most of these guys.
So I think the problem with that kind of experience is maybe we're not looking to push the boundaries of customer support. I think so many people have such a grudge on customer support. I mean, my first tech job was in support. I worked for Candy Crush for King. I used to work in the service improvement team, which basically meant we're trying to improve the tools and the processes for our agents to do a better job. And honestly, I loved it. The first time I left them and got into another job, it was in customer support. And that's how I got into chatbots. because that's where the industry is moving. And
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, I don't want to have, when I build chatbots, I don't want them to be the same as a customer service call. I want them to be better. Like, I want them to do things that people are too lazy to do, that like agents might not want to go back and read through like the last 3 tickets that you logged.
Mm-hmm.
But the chatbot doesn't mind. You just program it to do it, and it does it. Like, you know, it doesn't say like, well, yeah, but I'm going to lose 5 minutes of like going through the history, and then I don't really want to, and you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think like we're in the industry for like customer service, we're still at the stage where people are basically trying to take processes that they have in their customer support departments and kind of like dump them into a chatbot.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, that's not the way to do it. The way to do it is to design it with the conversation in mind first. And the best people to like get to help you along the way are your customer support agents.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They have these conversations all the time. And they're like, if you need to reset your password, like if you look at them and you're like, what's the first thing that you say? They're like, well, I'm just going to be like, do you have your ID in right? Do you have your password in right?
Mm-hmm.
You know? So like that part, you got sorted. Because like as soon as that person comes to like talk to your chatbot, you know like who they are. Because
Mm-hmm.
you ask them for like their ID or their name. So you know who they are. So you can check like, is their account locked? Is their account not locked? What's happened to their account? How many tries did they do before they actually got in or they didn't get in? You know, like you have all that knowledge. So like you go and deconstruct all of those steps. And that's the problem. It takes time. And it takes time to build like a really awesome, you know, like interactive chatbot experience. It's not something that you can just take a process, you know, and dump it over.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. And I think like because there's so many issues that people have in so many ways, and that's not entirely support's fault, because if you had a flawless product, you don't need support, you know. And I think like because there's so many things that they need to put into there, they just think like, okay, we just need to get this done like fast and dirty, just move everything across, and we can then cut 100 headcount, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Don't think, like actually, what if we take like, you know, the best team leads in our support teams and actually train them to build this workflows, to like map out these business processes for us, to see where we could make improvements. Like any step that a customer agent goes and checks something in a system, that can be automated in a chatbot. It can do it by itself, you know, like that's the thing. Like you need to have I don't like it sounds, you know, like it's super easy to build a chatbot, but actually if you want to have a super good experience for your customers, for your members, for your users, you need to have like things like first conversational design. Make sure that's accessible to everyone. Like I might talk differently to you because I'm in the UK. If you have a global audience, you need to make sure that the English you speak or the language, the Spanish, the French, the whatever,
Mm-hmm.
to everyone. Like I remember some of the like default phrases in a chatbot that I started building once was thanks a bunch. No one in the UK says thanks a bunch, like ever.
Right.
You had to like you had people be like, why is it talking to me like that? And you know, you need to go and you need to like improve that and remove that and just say like thank you. And like
Mm-hmm.
so you first need to have like, you know, that kind of like globalization. Who
Oh, I think we froze a little bit there. Are you back?
hello?
Can you hear me?
Hello?
I see you. I see you.
Are you there? Because I couldn't see you anymore.
I'm here.
Okay.
I'm here. Yeah, I think we had an internet hiccup there. Everyone on the internet just signed on to the next conference call. So
yeah, so like then you need to have stuff like expertise, like actual business process expertise. Then you need to have things like, like business improvement and innovation. Where are the pain points? Where are the kind of like other processes that you can automate? Then you need to have people that can tell you like, like you can make this interface better by using this or asking this. So like, it's a lot of like stuff that you need to actually consider to make a really, really good chatbot. So like, you have things like technical knowledge, business knowledge, process knowledge, customer service knowledge, design knowledge, like psychology, behavioral psychology, I don't know how you call it in English, but it's like, not semantics, but the actual linguistics. So you need to have linguistic skills. Like there are a lot of different things that go into it, but like once you get it right, it's like out of this world, because you can automate a process that might have taken 20 minutes previously to happen in a conversation in like 2 minutes.
Wow.
So, like I gave you the example with like a password reset. Well, if you go to a chatbot and you say, hey, I need to reset my password, and they can go and check all your accounts and they can see, you mean your, like desktop password? And it's like, oh yeah, okay, cool. I can see that you've like tried to log in, but your password expired yesterday. Would you like to reset it now? Yeah. Reset it, put in your new password, blah, 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 done. That's it.
That's
Instead
amazing.
of call someone and then they have to go check each system, see what's happened, see like if you're locked out, if you're not locked out, did it expire, did not expire, are you putting in the right account, are you doing this? It's like, no, it's like just that, done.
Yeah. Well, I want it to be that way for all of the communities that I work in and manage. So very often I'm finding that the community platforms themselves don't have a built-in chatbot functionality. Are there some third-party providers of chatbots that you like or that you've played with that you think could be incorporated in communities?
So I know a lot of communities online use Slack, and you can actually build Slack chatbots.
Oh, sure.
You can integrate them into the conversations, or you can have them like as an independent chatbot that people can go to and talk, like if they were talking to a person. So Slack is one of the ones that I really like. And I think because it's a communication platform, I feel like it's a good place for it. I think if you're looking to start out, I feel like Chat Fuel is a good place to start out because they have, they also have, I think, a user interface where you don't actually need to program a lot of it. It's more like building blocks and deciding, what to do, what to answer, what questions you answer and stuff like that, which is a bit more helpful. If you're not necessarily, like a chatbot developer or something like that. Facebook, again, if you have like a business page, you can actually link a chatbot to the business page. And I was playing around, and actually I was the first one that I tried to make on Facebook was a festival chatbot. I just thought, like this would be really cool. And actually, if you start to think about it, it's like people have so many questions when they go to festival, like where's the nearest toilet? Where's the nearest beer tent? Where's the nearest, like, what is the schedule for today? Like, put a reminder for me to remind me to go to stage X at this time.
Right.
It's like insane, and like Facebook provide an interface that's super, super easy to use. And actually, I think festivals and like events and stuff don't use it enough. It's like instead of having people like messaging and emailing you like 20,000 times asking questions about, like this conference is happening tomorrow. Where do I need to go? What's the nearest like tube station? How can I go there? It's like you just put it in and it gives you like a Google Maps and you can just see like what you can take to get there. Or like, like what are hotels nearby and stuff like that. Again, you can just give like cards with like prices and like cheapest hotels or more high-end hotels, or like you could even ask them like, what kind of a hotel do you want? Do you want like a cheap hotel? Do you want a luxury hotel? And then you just show them cards with like, the available hotels. I mean, there's so many things that you can do like to make people's lives easier. But again, it does take some, hard work and dedication, and you need to want to make it a good experience. I think if you don't want to make it a wow experience, it's never gonna be like a super good experience.
Well, it's like I talk about building any kind of community experience. If you're not going to put the time in to think about it, if you're not going to dedicate someone to facilitate that community, if you're not thinking through the full user experience of what's there, it's going to be not a very compelling thing. So I love your enthusiasm and your optimism about these platforms, and it gets me really excited to see what's going on in the space. I feel like there's so much more we could talk about. Maybe we can do another one of these sometime.
We can dive down into like where to start, how to start, like things that you need to think about, what platforms are there, what kind of like features they have and stuff like that. So if you want to, I can actually kind of like make a plan for what it's going to look like.
I love it.
Start out.
I think it's absolutely wonderful. I think you're wonderful. Thank you for your time and being on the show today.
Thank you.
If someone wants to get directly in touch with you, I know you're on Twitter, but do you have any other kind of preferred ways of contact or learning more about what you do?
They can totally hit me up on Twitter. I also have an email, but it's pretty weird. So I don't know if they can see the chat, but I can put it in the chat. So if they want to.
They can't put it in the chat, but I can pop a banner up on the screen.
Okay, I'll put it in there for you to see. I mean, I think I have it, but that. And then I think my Twitter is that.
All right. So I'll pop that up on the screen. So this is your email address.
Yep.
Very good. MMARADU. There we go.
And then Alexandra MMR for the Twitter.
All right. I'll pop that one up in just a second.
But I'm super happy to talk about it. I think I would love to see more people, like super passionate and want to innovate in this space. I think, like you said, some companies have chatbots, but they're still stuck in like, the 2000s, really come up to 2020. So I think there's loads of opportunities for this. And I mean, we've only covered a few, like festivals. I mean, like, like abusive households, customer support in every area, like even just like tech support, community support, game support. Like there's so many, like, it's basically anyone you want to ask a question. If there are enough questions and if there are enough experiences, then you could have a chatbot to do all of that for you.
Absolutely. Well, I do hope we can. You've inspired me to do a little more looking and working at what's available, particularly Facebook. I think I'll probably start out there with my page. But thank you again for spending some time with me today. Would love to do this again. And now people know how to get in touch with you if they have questions about their AI projects and their chatbot projects. That's it. That's it for what we have. I will just go ahead and wrap this up by saying thank you for watching this, and please like, follow, share, comment, and if you would get it out to your networks and anyone you think is relevant. I'm going to be sharing this up on the blog, as well as through some of the social media sites that I work through and some of the online community sites, because I think this is intensely interesting to community managers and anyone thinking about starting a community. So thank you for joining, and I will see you again soon.